The massive doors of the Galaxy Council chamber hissed open as Thexmor the Elder entered. His ancient crystalline body caught the light from 1,000 different suns streaming through the station's viewports. Around him, the representatives of 847 species filled the curved amphitheater that stretched up toward the artificial sky of Nexus Station. Thexmor had seen many wars in his 3,000 years of life. He had watched civilizations rise and fall like waves on a cosmic shore. But today he carried a warning that made his crystalline heart heavy with dread. The Valkyrie ambassador moved slowly to the central speaking platform. His 4 legs clicked against the metal floor as hundreds of different eyes, sensors and perception organs focused on him. Some species communicated through color changes, others through electromagnetic pulses, and still others through chemical releases. But all of them understood the gravity in Thexmor's ancient voice when he began to speak. Honored council members, his words echoed through translation devices that converted his meaning into 800 different forms of communication. I stand before you today not as a representative of the Valkyrie people, but as someone who has witnessed the true nature of humanity. A ripple of dismissive sounds swept through the chamber. The insectoid Clax TI representatives clicked their mandibles in what passed for laughter among their species. The gaseous Mordun entities pulsed with colors that indicated amusement. Even the massive stone-like beings from the outer spiral seemed to shift in what could only be interpreted as contempt. Thexmor raised one of his crystalline arms for silence. 200 years ago, during humanity's first expansion beyond their solar system, they established a small research station in what we considered Valkyrie territory. My people's mining guild saw this as an opportunity for easy profit. We sent raiders to destroy the station and take whatever technology we could find. The chamber grew quieter now. Even the most dismissive species paid attention when someone spoke of actual conflict with the humans. The attack was successful, Thexmor continued. We destroyed their research station completely. 137 humans died. We expected them to respond like any other species would. Perhaps they would file a complaint with this very council. Maybe they would demand compensation or threaten limited military action against our outer settlements. High Marshal Rex Doak of the Hegemony Coalition shifted his massive bulk in his specially reinforced seat. His species, the Vortak, were natural warriors who had conquered 17 different worlds through superior firepower and tactical brilliance. Get to the point, Crystal Spinner, he rumbled through his translator. What did these soft-skinned weaklings do? Thexmor's form flickered with what those familiar with Valkyrie biology would recognize as deep sadness. They hunted us. For 47 years, they hunted every single raider who participated in that attack. Not just the leaders who planned it. Not just the ship captains who carried it out. Every single individual who was present during the destruction of their research station. The chamber fell completely silent now. Even the constant background hum of life support systems seemed to fade. They tracked our raiders across 12 star systems, Thexmor went on. They learned our languages, studied our cultures, infiltrated our societies. They became experts on Valkyrie biology and psychology. Some of our raiders tried to hide by changing their identities and moving to distant worlds. The humans found them. Others attempted to join different species or undergo surgical alterations. The humans found them too. Captain Park Hyun-woo sat in the human observation section, his face expressionless as he listened to the old ambassador's testimony. He was young for a diplomat, barely 40 years old, but his dark eyes held the steady patience that seemed to characterize his entire species. His uniform bore the simple insignia of the Terran Federation, and he made no attempt to interrupt or contradict Thexmor's account. The humans never forgot, Thexmor said, his voice growing softer but somehow more menacing. They passed the hunt down through generations. Children grew up learning the names and faces of raiders who had fled to the far reaches of the galaxy. They dedicated entire lifetimes to tracking down individuals who thought themselves safe after decades of hiding. Rex Stokes slammed his weapon arm against his seat's armrest. The sound echoed through the chamber like a gunshot. Enough of this fear-mongering. The Hegemony Coalition commands the fleets of 14 species. We have conquered entire sectors of space. These humans control barely 50 star systems and have never engaged in large-scale warfare. One decisive strike will scatter them like space dust. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the chamber. The representatives of the coalition's member species nodded their various heads, fluttered their wings, or pulsed with colors of approval. They had grown fat and confident through centuries of easy conquests. Thexmor looked directly at Rex Stoke. Marshal, I have lived long enough to see the rise and fall of empires that span thousands of worlds. I have watched species with technology far superior to yours disappear into cosmic dust. But I have never seen anything like human persistence. They do not fight the way other species fight. They do not seek victory the way other species seek victory. They seek completion. What does that mean? Demanded Zexarin, the representative of the aquatic Merdesh people. It means, Thexmore replied, that when humans decide you are their enemy, they do not stop until you no longer exist. Not your government. Not your military. Your entire species. Forever. The voting began immediately after Thexmore finished speaking. Captain Park watched from his observation post as species after species registered their decision. The holographic display showed the tally climbing steadily. 500 votes for military action, then 600, then 700. When the final count appeared, Park felt a familiar coldness settle in his chest. 823 species had voted to authorize military action against humanity. Only 34 had opposed the measure. Park quietly activated the emergency beacon hidden in his uniform. The signal would reach Earth in 3 days, carried by quantum entanglement transmitters that the Galaxy Council still did not fully understand. War was coming. The alarm klaxon screamed across New Busan as the first energy beams cut through the morning sky. Commander Kim Min-ho was drinking his morning coffee in the patrol ship Morning Star when the coalition fleet dropped out of hyperspace like a swarm of metallic locusts. Sir, we're detecting massive energy signatures, his communications officer, Lieutenant Park Ji-woo, called out from her station. 14, no 23 capital ships. They're in attack formation. Kim set down his coffee cup and moved to the command chair. Through the view screen, he could see the peaceful agricultural world of New Busan rotating slowly below them. 2 million people lived on that world. Farmers, teachers, children, families who had come from Earth seeking a better life among the stars. Open a channel to the lead ship, Kim ordered. This is Commander Kim Min-ho of the Terran Federation. You are in violation of the Galactic Peace Accords. State your business or withdraw immediately. The response came not in words but in plasma fire. The first beam struck New Busan's orbital defense platform, turning it into a brief sun that faded to scattered debris. The second beam hit the planet's surface directly over the capital city of New Seoul. Kim watched in horror as a mushroom cloud rose from what had been home to 400,000 people just seconds before. The shockwave was visible even from orbit, a ring of destruction expanding outward like ripples on a pond. Sir, they're targeting the evacuation ships, Lieutenant Park's voice cracked as she spoke. Kim turned to see the civilian vessels that had been preparing for a routine supply run to Earth. The Family Hope carried 300 children who were going to visit relatives on the home world. The medical piece was a hospital ship filled with patients being transferred to better facilities. The coalition ships fired with mechanical precision. The Family Hope exploded in a ball of fire that briefly outshone the sun. The medical piece broke apart slowly, its hull cracking open like an egg to spill life pods and medical equipment into the void. Sir, incoming transmission from the coalition flagship, Park reported, tears streaming down her face. The main screen flickered to life, showing High Marshal Rex Doak in all his armored glory. Human Commander, the alien's voice rumbled through the translator, witness the price of your species' arrogance. Your children burned today so that the galaxy might learn. Kim's hands gripped the arms of his command chair so tightly that the metal began to bend. You're targeting civilians. Children. This is genocide. This is efficiency, Rex Doak replied. One strike to break your spirit. One demonstration to show the galaxy that humans are not the predators your ambassador claimed. You are prey. The transmission ended, and Kim watched as 12 more worlds suffered the same fate. Mining stations, research colonies, farming communities. All of them targeted with the same ruthless precision. All of them filled with families who had never raised a weapon against anyone. 3 days later, President Lee Soo-jin stood before the emergency session of the Terran Federation Council in Geneva. The Great Hall was packed with representatives from every human world, their faces grim with a rage that had been building since the first reports arrived. Fellow humans, President Lee began, her voice steady despite the tears that had not stopped falling since the attacks began. 3 days ago the Hegemony Coalition launched Operation Swift End. They targeted our children, our families, our most vulnerable colonies. She paused as the holographic display showed the casualty numbers, 4.2 million dead. Entire family lines erased. Children's colonies turned to radioactive ash. They wanted to send a message, the president continued. They wanted to show the galaxy that humans could be broken with one decisive strike. They wanted to prove that we were weak, that we would surrender after losing our young. Admiral Choi Jae-sung stepped forward with the official military report. His uniform was crisp and perfect, but his eyes held a coldness that had not been there a week ago. Madam President, we have confirmed the destruction of 12 worlds. The coalition specifically targeted civilian populations, evacuation ships, medical facilities, and schools. This was not war. This was attempted extinction. The chamber erupted in angry voices. Representatives shouted demands for immediate retaliation. Some called for nuclear strikes against coalition homeworlds. Others demanded the complete destruction of every coalition species. President Lee raised her hand for silence. The coalition made one critical mistake in their calculations, she said, her voice now carrying an edge that made even her closest advisors shift uncomfortably. They assumed that losing our children would break our spirit. She turned to address the assembly directly. They do not understand what they have awakened. For millions of years, humans have been persistence hunters. We do not fight for territory or resources. We fight to protect our young. And when someone kills our young? The president paused, letting the silence stretch until it became almost unbearable. When someone kills our children, we do not seek victory. We do not seek compensation. We do not seek surrender. We seek extinction. Complete and total extinction of every being that participated in this attack. The vote was called immediately. The question was simple. Should humanity declare total war against the hegemony coalition with the goal of complete species extinction? The vote was unanimous. 473 representatives, speaking for 52 human worlds, voted yes. Admiral Choi stepped back to the podium. The coalition believes they have broken us with one strike. They will learn that they have made only one mistake, but it will be their last mistake. Every coalition species will be hunted, President Lee announced to the galaxy. Every individual who participated in this attack will be found. Every world that supported this genocide will burn. The hunt begins now, and it ends only when they are all dead. The great hunt had begun. Captain Song Doon floated in the maintenance shaft of her ship, carefully adjusting the stealth plating that kept the Vengeance invisible to coalition sensors. 2 years ago, this vessel had been a simple cargo hauler carrying grain between human colonies. Now it was something else entirely. The ship's hull was black as space itself, covered in materials that absorbed every wavelength of light and energy. Its cargo holds had been converted into weapons bays and prison cells. Most importantly, its computer systems held detailed records of every coalition officer who had participated in the destruction of New Busan. Captain, came the voice of her first officer, Lieutenant Yoon Tae-ho, through the comm system. We've found them. Song pushed herself through the zero-gravity shaft back to the bridge. The main screen showed a coalition supply convoy moving through what they thought was secure space. 3 cargo ships escorted by 2 destroyers, carrying food and ammunition to coalition forces on the front lines. Identification confirmed, reported Ensign Nam Soo-jin from the sensor station. Destroyer Claw of Victory and Destroyer Final Strike. Both ships were part of the fleet that attacked New Busan. We have visual confirmation of their commanding officers. Song studied the tactical display. The convoy was traveling through an asteroid field, using the large rocks for cover against long-range sensors. They had no idea that human ships had been waiting here for 3 weeks. Signal the Ghost and Shadow, Song ordered. Begin the hunt. The 3 human ships moved like predators through the asteroid field. They had learned much in 2 years of war. Coalition forces expected direct attacks, massive fleet engagements, the kind of warfare that civilized species had practiced for thousands of years. Instead, humans fought like their ancestors had on ancient Earth. They hunted. The first coalition cargo ship simply vanished. One moment it was there on sensors, the next moment it was gone. No explosion, no distress signal, just empty space where a ship had been. The coalition escort commander, a Vortak warrior named Kexmol, immediately ordered his ships into defensive positions. All vessels report status. Where is Supply 3? But Supply 3 was already in human hands, its crew captured and its cargo seized. Song's people had boarded the vessel so quickly and quietly that the other ships in the convoy never even knew an attack had taken place. The second cargo ship lasted 17 minutes longer. Its crew managed to send a brief distress signal before the human ships disabled their communications and life support. The third cargo ship tried to run, but human engines were faster and human patience was infinite. By the end of the day, Song had what she wanted. The commanding officers of both destroyer escorts, along with detailed records of every crew member who had fired on the evacuation ships at New Busan. The interrogation took place in the converted cargo hold of the Vengeance. Captain Song stood before the captured coalition officers, her face calm and expressionless. Behind her, cameras broadcast the scene across 16 star systems. "I am Captain Song Doon of the Terran Federation Navy," she began. "2 years ago you participated in the destruction of New Busan. You killed 2 million civilians, including 300 children who were evacuating to safety." The Vortak commander, Kexmol, raised his massive head defiantly. "We followed orders. It was war." "War?" Song's voice remained perfectly level. "You targeted hospitals. You destroyed evacuation ships carrying children. You turned farming communities into radioactive dust. That was not war. That was genocide." She walked closer to the prisoners. "You wanted to teach humans about fear. Today I will teach you about justice." What followed was broadcast across coalition space and beyond. The executions were methodical, professional, and absolutely terrifying in their precision. Each coalition officer was given the chance to confess their crimes and identify other participants. Most of them talked. News of the executions spread through coalition space faster than their fastest ships. Entire fleets began deserting their posts. Species that had eagerly joined the coalition 2 years ago now scrambled to distance themselves from the war. The insectoid Klax Ti were the first to break. Their ambassador, a creature called Zitkar, sent a formal message to Admiral Choi Jae-sung requesting separate peace negotiations. Admiral Choi's response was played on every communication channel in Klax Ti space. "There is no peace. There is no negotiation. There is only the hunt, and the hunt ends when you are all dead." The aquatic Merdesh tried next, offering to provide information about coalition military positions in exchange for mercy. The human response was a single ship that appeared in their home system, broadcast the same message, and vanished before their defense fleets could react. High Marshal Rex Stoke found himself commanding an alliance that was falling apart faster than he could hold it together. His own officers were beginning to question orders. Some had been caught attempting to surrender to human forces, only to discover that humans were not accepting surrenders. In desperation, Rex Stoke sent a message to the Galaxy Council. "Honored representatives, the humans fight like no sapient species should fight. They do not seek territory or resources. They do not want our surrender or our submission. They want our extinction. Complete and total extinction." The message continued, "I have commanded armies across 100 worlds. I have studied warfare for 3 centuries. But this is not warfare. This is extermination. The humans hunt us like animals and they will not stop until we are all dead. The Galaxy Council must intervene immediately." The Council's response was predictably slow. Committees were formed to study the situation. Debates were scheduled to discuss possible interventions. Protocols were drafted to address the humanitarian crisis. Meanwhile, human hunter fleets moved through coalition space like a plague. They left behind them a trail of silent worlds and empty space. Supply lines disappeared. Communication networks went dark. Entire species simply vanished from galactic civilization. Song stood on the bridge of the Vengeance as they approached their next target. The ship's computers had identified another group of coalition officers who had participated in the attacks on human colonies. The hunt would continue until every last one of them was found. "Captain," Lieutenant Yoon reported, "we're receiving surrender offers from 17 different coalition species." Song did not even look up from her tactical display. "Ignore them. We are not here to accept surrenders. We are here to finish what they started." Commander Yoon Ji-hai stood on the bridge of the Eternal Watch, staring at the blue-green world that filled her view screen. 4 years ago, this planet had been the proud homeworld of the Vortak species, home to 12 billion warriors who had boasted of conquering 17 different worlds. Now it was a prison. "Status report," she said quietly to her communications officer. "Same as yesterday, Commander," Lieutenant Kim Dong-woo replied. "No ships attempting to leave the surface. No communications sent beyond the atmosphere. Food supplies estimated at 6 weeks remaining." Yoon nodded. Her fleet of 30 ships had been holding position around the Vortak homeworld for 18 months. They had not fired a single shot at the planet below. They did not need to. They simply waited. The strategy was working perfectly. Every ship that tried to bring supplies to the world below was destroyed before it could reach the atmosphere. Every probe that launched from the surface was vaporized the moment it cleared the gravity well. Every message that tried to leave the planet was blocked by human jamming systems. The Vortak had built their world to be a fortress. Massive planetary shields protected the surface from orbital bombardment. Underground cities could survive for decades without outside contact. Automated defense systems could destroy any invasion fleet that came too close. But they had not planned for humans who simply watched and waited. "Commander," called Ensign Park Min-young from the sensor station, "we're detecting another attempt to breach the blockade. Small courier ship launching from the northern continent." Yoon did not even turn around. "Destroy it." The brief flash of light in space marked the end of another desperate attempt to call for help. On the planet below, former High Marshal Rex Doak watched through his command center's view screen as the debris of the courier ship scattered across his world's upper atmosphere like falling stars. Rex Doak had lost over 200 kilograms of body weight in the past year. His once mighty frame, built for conquest and warfare, now looked skeletal and weak. Around him, his remaining officers moved like ghosts through the empty halls of what had once been the Coalition's greatest military headquarters. "Sir," whispered his aide, a young Vortak named Zelmon whose voice cracked with hunger, "the food distribution centers report that we have enough supplies for exactly 43 days. Rex Doak closed his 4 eyes and tried to remember what it felt like to be confident. 2 years ago, he had commanded fleets that could destroy entire solar systems. Now he could not even get a message past the human ships that surrounded his world like a cage of metal and death. "Have the humans responded to our surrender offers?" he asked, though he already knew the answer. "No, sir. They do not respond to any communications. They just watch." On Earth, Dr. Kang Soo-bin stood before the Federation War Council explaining why the siege strategy was working so well. "Humans evolved as persistence hunters," she told the gathered military leaders. "Our ancestors on the African plains did not catch prey by being faster or stronger. They caught it by never giving up." She activated a holographic display showing ancient Earth. A human hunter would wound an antelope with a spear, then follow it for days or weeks. The antelope was faster, but humans could run longer. Eventually, the animal would become so exhausted and hopeless that it would simply stop running and wait to die. Admiral Choi Jae-sung leaned forward in his chair. "And you believe this same psychology works on spacefaring civilizations?" "It works on any creature with a nervous system advanced enough to understand hopelessness," Dr. Kang replied. "The Coalition species are learning what Earth's megafauna learned 60,000 years ago. Humans do not stop. Ever." Back on the Vortak homeworld, Rex Doak made his way to the Planetary Communication Center. The massive facility had once coordinated military operations across 14 different star systems. Now it was used for one desperate purpose: begging for help. Rex Doak activated the emergency broadcast system, sending his message across every Galaxy Council frequency. His voice, once strong enough to inspire armies, now sounded like a broken whisper. "This is former High Marshal Rex Doak of the Vortak people," he began. "I am broadcasting on all council frequencies in the hope that anyone, will hear this message and intervene in what has become a war of extinction." He paused, looking around at the empty command center that had once buzzed with activity. "The humans have surrounded our homeworld for 18 months. They do not attack us. They do not communicate with us. They simply watch us die slowly. Our children are starving. Our elderly are becoming sick from malnutrition. Our warriors are too weak to maintain the defense systems." His voice broke as he continued. "We surrender. We surrender everything. Our military, our government, our technology, our lives. We will give the humans anything they want. We will serve them as slaves for 1,000 generations. We will do anything they ask if they will just let our children live." The transmission ended and Rex Doak collapsed into his command chair. Around him, the few remaining officers waited for a response that they all knew would never come. On the Eternal Watch, Commander Yoon received a full transcript of the broadcast within minutes. She read it carefully, then deleted it from her ship's computers. "Commander," Lieutenant Kim asked quietly, "should we respond to their surrender offer?" Yoon turned back to her view screen, where the Vortak homeworld continued to rotate slowly in the light of its dying sun. "They killed our children," she said simply. "Now they learn what that means." The siege continued. On the planet below, the population countdown reached 39 days of food remaining. The humans continued watching, patient as the void of space itself, knowing that time was on their side. It had always been on their side. Admiral Choi Jae-sung stood on the observation deck of the Retribution, looking down at the dark world that spun silently below. 6 years ago, this planet had been home to 12 billion Vortak warriors. Now it was a tomb. The planet's surface showed no lights, no signs of life, no movement at all. The great cities that had once stretched across continents were empty shells. The orbital defense platforms that had protected this world for centuries now drifted as cold metal debris around a dead sphere of rock and water. "Sir," came the voice of his aide, Lieutenant Park So-young, "the final biological scans confirm zero life signs on the surface. The last survivors died 22 days ago." Admiral Choi nodded but did not turn away from the viewport. His fleet of 50 ships maintained perfect formation around the lifeless world, their sensors constantly scanning, their weapons always ready. They had been here for 3 months since the planet fell silent, and they would remain for 3 more months as ordered by Federation Command. "Why do we stay, sir?" Lieutenant Park asked quietly. "There's nothing left to guard against." The Admiral was quiet for a long moment before answering. "We stay because the galaxy needs to understand what this means. Every species that might think about harming human children needs to see human ships standing guard over the grave of those who tried." Throughout Coalition space, the same scene repeated itself on 14 other worlds. Human fleets maintaining silent vigils over planets that would never again know the sound of voices or the movement of living beings. The message was clear and terrible. This is what happens to those who kill human children. Light years away, in the great assembly hall of Nexus Station, Thexmore the Elder stood once again before the Galaxy Council. But this time the massive chamber felt empty. Where once 847 species had gathered in confident discussion, now only 312 remained active in galactic politics. The missing representatives had not been destroyed by human weapons. They had simply fled. Some had packed up their entire civilizations and departed for distant galaxies beyond human reach. Others had sent messages of complete submission to Earth and withdrawn from all galactic affairs. A few had simply gone silent, hiding in their home systems and hoping that humans would forget they existed. "Honored Council members," Thexmore began, his crystalline voice carrying easily through the half-empty chamber, "6 years ago I stood in this same place and warned you about the nature of humanity. You chose not to listen. Today I stand before you to explain what we have all learned." The holographic display activated, showing a map of known galactic space. Vast sections that had once been marked in the colors of various species now bore the simple blue designation of human territory. "When this war began," Thexmore continued, "humanity controlled 52 star systems. Today they control over 400 systems. But here is what makes this expansion different from every other conquest in galactic history: they did not take these systems by force." The ancient ambassador paused, letting his words sink in. Species after species simply evacuated their worlds when human fleets approached. Entire civilizations packed up their populations and moved to distant corners of the galaxy rather than risk being hunted. In the diplomatic section reserved for human observers, Ambassador Nam Ji-won sat quietly in her simple uniform. She was young for such an important position, barely 35 years old, but her presence in the chamber carried more weight than any heavily armed battleship. Every species representative was acutely aware that she spoke for the beings who had just exterminated 14 entire civilizations without losing a single major battle. "The Coalition believed they understood warfare," Thexmore went on. "They thought that superior numbers and advanced technology would give them an easy victory over a species that had never engaged in large-scale galactic conflict. They made one critical error in their calculations." The holographic display changed to show human evolutionary history. Images of ancient Earth appeared, showing early humans hunting massive creatures across vast plains. "They assumed that intelligence eliminates predator instincts," Thexmore explained. "But humans prove the opposite. Intelligence does not eliminate predator instincts, it perfects them. It allows them to plan, to coordinate, to persist across years and decades and generations." The Clax TI representative, one of the few Coalition species to survive by surrendering early in the war, clicked his mandibles nervously. "Ambassador Thexmore, surely you are not suggesting that humans are fundamentally different from other sapient species?" "That is exactly what I am suggesting," Thexmore replied. "Most intelligent species evolved from prey animals or omnivores. They developed intelligence to avoid conflict, to find peaceful solutions, to build cooperative societies. Humans evolved from persistence predators. They developed intelligence to hunt more efficiently." The chamber fell completely silent as the implications became clear. "When you threaten most species young, they fight to defend their children," Thexmore continued. "When you threaten human young, they hunt to exterminate yours." The Coalition learned the difference between these two responses. The vote on the human doctrine was called immediately. The proposal was simple but unprecedented in galactic history. Humanity would be officially classified as an apex persistent species, with aggressive action against human interests automatically resulting in complete species extinction. The vote was unanimous. 312 species voted to accept the doctrine. 0 voted against it. There were no abstentions. Ambassador Nam finally spoke, her voice calm and measured. The Terran Federation appreciates the Council's wisdom in passing this doctrine. However, we want to make one thing clear. This doctrine exists not as a threat, but as protection. Protection for every species in this chamber. She stood and looked around the mostly empty assembly hall. We did not want this war. We wanted to explore, to learn, to grow alongside our galactic neighbors. But when forced to choose between our children's safety and your continued existence, we will always choose our children. The ambassador's final words became known throughout the galaxy as the human promise. Leave our families alone, and we will be the best neighbors you could ask for. Threaten our children and learn why extinction is forever. The great hunt was over. The lesson had been taught. And across the galaxy, civilizations that had once dreamed of conquest now looked to the stars and remembered that somewhere in the darkness, humans were watching.